Hello, I'm Leah. Welcome to Balderton's 10-minute ministry. The Olympics took place every 4 years at the centre of Greece. St Paul would have been even more familiar with the Isthmian Games. The event took place every other year and was second only in importance to the Olympics. Paul would have noted much of the feverish atmosphere surrounding the events, the preparations, the training, the travellers, the political and economic implications. Such a huge money spinner, even then. He would have been no stranger to congestion, to bragging, to one country team thinking they were better than another, scandals of cheating, bribing, doping. Paul uses several sporting metaphors in his letters. In the first letter to the Thessalonians, Paul describes the Christians there as a gold medal to boast about. Writing to the Galatians, he talks about their journey of faith. They were running along nicely, and then it all goes wrong. Paul is widely believed to have been a tent maker. It's possible he may have had work constructing tents for the competitors for the games at Corinth. And he says this in his first letter to the Corinthians there. Don't you realise that the runners in the stadium, all of them run, but only one gets the medal? You're to run in such a way as to win. Paul says everyone who is in athletic training exercises self-control, but they do it to win a medal that will fade away. So I am running in such a way as to not be without purpose. When I box, I do it in such a way as to not land my blows on empty air. Instead, I let my body know who is boss, and I make it my slave. The point Paul is making is that they need to be serious in their mission as athletes and in their training. Writing to the Christians in Philippi who have fallen out, he tells them they need to work together, but it more accurately translates as playing on the same side together. He's talking about Evodia and Syntyche, to stop scratching each other's eyes out. He says they played on the same team as me and Clement and the rest of our team. He then continues in the letter, don't be intimidated by your opponents. And later, he says we are engaged on the same team at game, the same agon, the agony of an athletics contest. And however keen on sport we are or not, we've all experienced that as spectators or competitors as we urge our favourites on. He encourages the Philippians to keep going in the race towards Christ that Paul himself is running. He says, I haven't yet got it, nor have I already peaked, stretching out for what is ahead, rushing to the target, towards the prize, which can also be translated as the referee's stand or umpire's dressing room, an unusual image for God and heaven. In his second letter to Timothy, if someone enters the games, they don't win the medal unless they compete in accordance with the rules. And later he says, most famously of himself, I've competed in the games. I've finished the marathon. And more usually we think of it saying next, I have kept the faith. But it could be, I have kept the pledge, which could be something like the numbers runners wear, or the electronic chip in their shoes to prevent cheating. Why talk about sport and faith now? We're in the middle of the Euros. The Olympics have been postponed for a year and are about to take place. Participants have been training without the possibility of competition for almost 18 months. Many who have prepared their whole lives for one moment have seen their opportunity slip away and pass to someone else. In sport, not everyone can win the prize, Not everyone can take part, and certainly not everyone can be the best. So, here's a story to finish. There's a gruelling 543.7 mile endurance race from Sydney to Melbourne in Australia. It's the world's longest and toughest ultra-marathon. In 1983, 150 world-class runners converged on Sydney for the event. On the day of the race, a toothless 61-year-old potato farmer and sheep herder named Cliff Young approached the registration table wearing overalls and galoshes over his work boots. At first, people thought he was there to watch the race, but to their surprise, Cliff Young declared his intention to run and requested a number. When I was reading this story, I stopped at this point and went and searched online to make sure that the story was true, because I didn't believe it. But it is true. And whether you've heard of Cliff Young or not, there's even a film about this. So, Cliff had grown up on a farm without the benefit of luxuries like horses and four-wheel drives. When storms rolled in, Cliff headed out to round up 2,000 sheep over a 2,000-hectare farm. Sometimes he had to run with them 2 or 3 days to complete the roundup. The staff were incredulous, but they issued Cliff number 64. As he mingled with the other runners at the starting line, spectators couldn't believe their eyes. The politest amongst them said, "This must be a joke." When the gun went off, bystanders snickered at Cliff, left behind in his galoshes and overalls, as the other runners with their sculpted bodies and running gear briskly began the race. Snickers gave way to laughter when Cliff began to run, not like the other runners, but what could only be described as a leisurely, odd shuffle. All of Australia was riveted to the live broadcast as they watched the scene unfold. Someone should stop that crazy old man before he kills himself. Well, 5 days, 15 hours and 4 minutes later, Cliff Young came shuffling across the finish line in Melbourne, winning the ultramarathon. He didn't win by a few seconds or even a few minutes. The nearest runner was 9 hours and 56 minutes behind him. Australians were stunned. Yet, this was remarkable, but seemingly impossible. How could it have happened? Everyone knew that the only way to win was to run for 18 hours, then stop and rest and sleep for 6. This routine was repeated for 5 punishing days. But no one had told Cliff that. He just shuffled along day and night, night and day, without stopping. Cliff broke the previous race record by 9 hours and became an overnight national hero. Interestingly, professional runners began to study and experiment with the odd shuffle that Cliff used. Many long-distance runners have since adopted what has come to be called the Young Shuffle, because in fact it is aerodynamic and energy efficient. Victory in the Christian life comes through endurance. The Christian life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. In the short distance race, speed is important. In the long distance, endurance is what leads to success. In Hebrews it says, "The race set before us, but each of us must run the race in our own special way, with the gifts and talents God has given us." And Jesus encourages us, for the joy that was before him and is before us. When we run the Christian ultramarathon with endurance, keeping our focus on Jesus, we can be assured of finishing strong and hearing those wonderful words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Consider him who endured such hostility of sinners against himself, so that you too will not grow weary and lose heart.